Gamers, what's good? So it might be a little bit late for me to drop a tier list, honestly. Like, we do them every format, but usually I try to aim for, like, you know, 2 weeks after the format started. Now we're closer to about 3 weeks, and I think we have like about 2 weeks left of this format, maybe even less. But I did feel like I should make one because we're gonna have our first Master Duel Central tournament happening on June 1st. We need a tier list, right? Like, we need to know what's good. We need to know what we gotta play to get good results in the MDC tourney. And now I'm not gonna say that my word is law or anything, but I do think I can help guide you along at least a little bit and give you my opinion on what the format looks like at the moment. I just remembered, chat, I need to actually plug the tournament. Okay, I need to tell them, the link is in the description, 12 p.m. EST on June 1st. We're doing a legit Swiss rounds tournament. It's best of 1. Top cut is gonna be best of 3. The tournament is free to enter. First place is gonna get $100 gift card. Second place is going to get a $50 gift card, and third place is going to get a $25 gift card. What else do I need to say? So they know about the pricing. They know that it's free. They know that it's on June 1st at 12 p.m. EST. Oh, yeah. And the last day that you can sign up for the tournament is on May 31st. So just the date right before the tournament. After that date, we're not going to be taking any more signups because we need to do a little bit of setup. You know, we'll have to give all the roles out in the Discord for the people participating. And speaking of which, you will also need to join the Discord. So if you guys want to participate, make sure to sign up. But we got to move on to this tier list here. So the first thing we're going to do with a tier list is get the obvious stuff out of the way. I don't like doing drum rolls. I don't like pretending that we don't know. So obviously, absolute best deck in the format, we're looking at Elder God tier Penguin. Now, unfortunately, because Penguins are so broken, no one really plays them in ladder because we just kind of have this gentleman's agreement here in Master Duel. You know, we're all gentlemen, so we don't really like playing the super, like, unfair stuff. So instead, you know, we have what we call the meta, which is everything else basically than Penguin. So right under Penguins, we have at the tier 1, obviously, Snake Eyes, if I can find it. So Snake Eyes, and where's Rescue Ace? Where's Rescue Ace? Yeah, Rescue Ace, Snake Eyes, you know, uncontested, absolute best decks in the game. Let's be real. That's the tier 1. I don't think anything else is really tier 1 right now. So, you know, I don't want to do, like I said, I don't want to do a drum roll. I think tier lists are kind of annoying when they do that because when we want to talk about the other decks, really, we want to talk about their matchups relative to what are the best decks in the format. And in my opinion, it's obviously Snake Eyes and Rescue Ace. I don't think this is really up for debate. I think pretty much everyone agrees with this. This is like the one take I have that I don't think my chat will roast me for. I think chat will be like, yeah, sure. And now we can move on to some hot takes, some goofy stuff. I do have a list written down here to help guide me along. Well, we're going to start with, I guess, what some people might call a hot take. I think Branded, while it isn't bad or anything, I don't think it's like tier 2 anymore. I think it's like top of tier 3. My reasoning for Branded, yeah, it's the Branded take, sorry chat. My reasoning for Branded is that, okay, yeah, this deck is like super strong. It's been strong in Master Duel pretty much forever. It's really well suited to a best of 1 format. Despite all the hits, it doesn't really get any worse. It always just kind of stays competitive, you know, really competent. The one thing I feel slowly it might be getting power crept just because it's also not really getting better. You know, it hasn't gotten better in a minute. And a lot of other decks are getting better. You know, the meta is progressing forward, whereas I feel Branded is just kind of staying in place. It's solid for sure. And I think tier 3 decks, at least for my tier list, are really, really good. Top of tier 3, it's like on the cusp of being tier 2, but just a little too power crept, in my opinion at least, to, you know, go up with the tier 2 decks. I still think it's good. Again, don't get me wrong. It has really good consistency despite all the consistency hits. Insane grind game, you know, not as good as Snake Eyes in terms of a grind game, but still really, really solid grind game. It has good plays into Max C. Not the best thing ever, but solid. It gives you the secret skill custom hand. Okay, fair enough, fair enough. Doesn't matter if you imperm their Aliber. They have the Branded Fusion in hand, and if you don't have Ash for the Branded Fusion, you lose. And then if you do, well, it doesn't matter because they had the called by anyway for your Ash. So that is one thing that's really, really good about Branded. But I still don't think it's really quite enough to put it over the top. So we're going to leave Branded in tier 3. So I'll just get my other take out of the way here. That's going to upset my core audience right now. And then we can move on to decks that people care less about. So I'm just going to say it right now. Dinos, they got a lot of support recently, right? They got a ton of support. They got a whole lot of support with the new Lars, the new Evil Zor cards. Like that's crazy. I mean, it's pretty cool. Unfortunately, I don't think Dino... Sorry, chat. I don't think Dinos is anything better than playable. And I don't even think it's high playable. I'm gonna be honest with you, chat. As much as I love dinos, they're just kind of going through it still, man. The consistency is bad, dude. The consistency is a massive issue. You need the 2-card combos every damn time. It's incredibly interruptible. Obviously, if they ash your Misk Engrave, like, you just lose half the time. There's just so many things going against dinos, and there's so many decks that play like dinos, but better. Like, I don't have Spiral on this tier list, you know? I hate Spiral. I don't know enough about Spiral to even consider it, and I don't consider Spiral to be a rogue deck. But if we were to compare a deck like Spiral to dinos, I mean, really, they're as crazy of a combo deck, but they don't have as many consistency issues. Also, Dinos has like no staple slots, like very, very few staple slots. We had the Xeno build a couple months ago that was kind of focused on making some more space for staples, and that helped. Dude, like, you've got to be super dedicated to actually get to Master 1 with Dinos. And that's not to say it's impossible. That's not to say you can't do it. I genuinely believe every single deck on this list can make it to Master 1. This is a Dino is probably one of the highest effort decks to get to Master 1. I know this deck really well. I love this deck. I absolutely love Dinos. I've been a Dino fan forever. And I'm hoping that eventually we'll maybe see a format where they're like solid again. But I would really feel uncomfortable putting this deck anything above like playable, honestly. I really can't put it in Rogue. I guess we might as well do a Rogue deck. So guys, seriously chat, like every single time I make a tier list, everyone in the comments just hates me for this. But I'm going to do it again. And I'm just going to take the shit again because I don't want to lie to people. But Vanadium and Superheavy Samurai, they're Rogue, okay? They have really, really strong combos. They absolutely can win. They are competitive, but they have a lot of things going against them in this particular meta, which makes them Rogue, right? And that's why I could never put Dinos up here, because this shit is Rogue now. SHS is Rogue, ain't no way. Who said that? Okay, first of all, now Soul Piercer is at 1. Soul Piercer's at 1. So this deck is way more susceptible to regular interruption on top of losing to Max C. Then you're going to say, what? No, if you get Max C, you just pass on Baguska. Okay, you pass on Baguska against every freaking Link deck that doesn't care about Baguska and just outs it with SP that just came out. So, okay, so we have the winner of the first DC Cup, Jera, in the chat. Don't say that. I gotta say, dude, I'm gonna put this in my video, bro. You can give me some extra credibility by saying I'm right. Can you do that? The Xbox Warrior Jera agrees with me in chat right now. That's how you know I'm right. Superheavy Samurai was worse when it was popular. Okay, so that's a fair point. Well, I think that's just the case for Rogue in general. A lot of the time, Rogue gets the advantage of people not playing the specific outs for it. For example, for Superheavy Samurai, everyone was on Droll, so Superheavy was a bit more scary to play. I still disagree with Jera though. I think this deck, just having Soul Piercer at 1 and already losing to a lot of the popular hand traps anyway, makes it even worse now, especially considering that now that you only have 1 Soul Piercer, this deck loses way harder to a card like Imperm. Even like 1 Ash can sometimes do it, although that's kind of rare. But 1 Imperm on the Link 1, depending on the hand, will actually just win you the game. Their hands are a lot less consistent. They don't have nearly as much gas, or at least their odds of drawing into their gas is way lower. Even DD Crow, yeah, straight up DD Crow will sometimes win you the game. Like DD Crow will literally win you a game against Superheavy Samurai now. I guess we talked a lot about Superheavy Samurai. Yeah, I think this deck is Rogue. I think Vanadium is slightly better. Now Soul Piercer's at 1, so I feel a lot more confident saying this. But yeah, at least Vanadium has more outs to Max C. That's really the vast, like that's my logic. That's why it's better. Like the combos are very comparable. Superheavy Samurai still sets up an absolutely insane turn 1 board. I think honestly, debatably, still sets up a better turn 1 board than Vanadium. But Vanadium has twice as many outs to Max C. And they both lose to Max C. I'll say I think the hands are probably a bit more consistent in Super Heavy, but we did get a little consistency boost with the release of Visa Samsara. So Vanadium, yeah, it's still not the most consistent deck ever, but it's a little bit better. All right, so someone was asking for Infernoble in chat. I just wanted to explain my position a little bit better. I think I did it even worse than usual. But honestly, yeah, I still think these 2 decks are Rogue. But if we're talking about Infernobles, yeah, you know, they're kind of like, it's a combo deck, you know, it's kind of like Vanadium, it's kind of like Super Heavy. Or is it? I actually think this deck is tier 3. Legit. And I might be biased here because these are the ops. I never beat this deck. They just always have everything. So I don't know if that's a coincidence or if the deck is that crazy. I think this deck is really, really good. And I do think it's better than Vanadium and Superheavy Samurai. Like you said in chat, yeah, they can play through everything. And more importantly, they have a really good going second turn now because a lot of people just run them with Mikanko cards, and it just works so well together. It's kind of disgusting. Dice are the same things though, Droll Maxi. Okay, but this deck has a great going second turn, whereas this doesn't, and this doesn't either. I mean, this is better than Super Heavy, but both of them not that great going second, pretty damn interruptible. This deck can force you to waste all your resources and just wipe you with freaking Mikanko cards. It's disgusting. The fact that you can, oh yeah, you can just go Mikanko cards to force every single interruption, and then after people wasted all their interruption on your Mikanko cards, you could just start playing Infernoble on turn 2. Just for that alone. I mean, this deck actually sucks going second, and this one is just okay. This one's really good. So I think just for that turn 2 alone, and the fact that it has just as good of a crazy combo going first, and that it can play through, in my opinion, more interruption than these two decks, although that kind of depends on the situation, I would put Infernoble in tier 3. I think it's a better combo deck, like Wombo combo type deck. Oh yeah, true. And if we talk about win rate cards, these cards are consistently, Infernoble cards are consistently in the top of the win rates when you look at Master Duel meta. When these cards hit the field, they're winning the freaking game. Like Maz said, you don't see a lot of Superheavy Samurai or Manedium cards in top 5 win rate cards. That's very true. Oh, let's just do this. Okay, so I'm just going to be real here. I think Purrely is like the top of tier 2, and it's not even close. I think it's like by far the closest deck to these two up here. Purrely is really, really, really good this format. If you just look at the win rates on Master Duel meta for ladder, you'll see that these cards are doing really, really well. Almost as good as Snake Eyes and Rescue Ace. And that's for good reason. I mean, no one's prepared for it, really. They have, obviously, a ton of gas. The Ghost Trick engine is disgusting. That's not to say this deck is invincible. There's a lot of counterplay. And I would say going second, sometimes it can really be a struggle because your opponent can just kind of gimp your activations by just chaining random effects to stop you from attaching spells to your own monsters. So I definitely wouldn't say it's like the craziest deck ever going second. It's not bad either. It has a good amount of gas, so that can work. And obviously Maxi is a card, and it has a decent amount of space for hand traps. But I definitely think the turn 1 is just so oppressive, and you just can't really afford to run kaijus right now. Your odds of getting to your goddess into an unaffected X-Purrely Noir is extremely low. So outing X-Purrely Noir right now is really, really hard. It's mostly because you don't see this deck often enough to be prepared for it. That's exactly it, Maz. That's my logic too. I think it's because the counters to Purrely are so bad against every other really good deck that Purrely's just really well situated to just kind of sneak a bunch of wins constantly and have a really, really high win rate just because of that. So yeah, it's kind of like the nature of best of 1 formats, making Purrely able to kind of sneak its way in by just being in a format where you don't really want to run the counters to Purrely. Yeah, Kaiju Hydrant, that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, that's really why. I think that's exactly why, honestly. It's because no one's really running the outs. So yeah, Purrely is a pretty good pick right now. Droll is bad right now. That's another one. Yeah, that's another one. No one's running Droll because Droll sucks against Snake Eyes for the most part, other than like into Bonfire. So yeah, that's another great example. It sucks it to Rescue Ace as well because they can just go Turbulence and set all their traps. They don't need to add anything to hand. Sleepy at 3 is a mistake. Maybe, dude. Maybe. I think Purrely is really insane. So we did what I think is the top of tier 2. We did what I think is the top of tier 3. But I don't think these are the top of Rogue. I actually think the top of Rogue now is Unchained. Unchained, it's pretty simple, really. All these decks lose to the exact same thing, but now you can make SP using your Unchained Rage. I think there's really like no debating that that's like way better than what you used to be able to make with it. I mean, dude, SP is just a crazy card, right? Just SP alone, you'll get a banish, and then you'll get an extra interruption off of SP being on the field. This deck also has some cool advantages, like Evenly is pretty popular right now, and this deck doesn't really care about Evenly. It has a lot of really, really good plays into Evenly. Sure, it still loses to Max C, like all of these decks over here, but, you know, it has a good amount of gas. It has pretty good consistency, I would say, since it doesn't rely too much on its normal summon. And I think the SP play just makes it significantly better, on top of the Caesar being crazy, being a good play around Nibiru. I don't know if some people consider this a hot take. I know some people think Unchained is like maybe tier 3 or something. That's not the case, but I do think it is the top of Rogue. And keep in mind, I think Rogue is really strong. I think all the decks in Rogue are really strong. Honestly, a decent pick. I think you can definitely get to Master 1 with this. It'll be an uphill battle, but not nearly as much as something like Dinos, you know? Let's do Mathmech. I think Mathmech is like... This might be a bit of a spoiler here, but I think it's the best Cybers deck still. I know some people are now playing Mathmech Ignister as like a way to play it. I'm not sure if that's the best way to play it, honestly. I haven't tested Cybers much, but Mathmech is still just a very solid deck. It just doesn't really disappear. Circular is a crazy card, but that's not all, you know. Cybers has a ton of gas. It's really, really strong. In my opinion, it's the second best deck in tier 3. Mathmech is mid. I mean, it's mid if you like compare it relative to the rest of the meta, but in a vacuum, Mathmech is crazy, right? Like, it has a really, really, really good turn 1. It can play through a good amount of interruption. It is pretty bad into Max C now. It used to have better plays into Max C, but because people have raised the ceiling so much of the deck, now when you get Max Seed, it is pretty rough if you don't have the out. But the deck can still run a ton of hand traps. It still has an easy OTK. Actually has 2 ways to OTK going second that are both super consistent and easy to do through a bunch of interruption. So I think it's a no-brainer to put Mathmech, you know, at least in tier 3. You'll probably get a bunch of free wins off of Mathmech, even to this day, dude. Let's do Labyrinth. Labyrinth hasn't really changed for me. I still think it's like a really high tier 2 deck. I think, you know, in a best of 1 format, being a trap deck that can play on turn 0, that obviously goes crazy on turn 1 and isn't even bad on turn 2, is just ridiculous. The amount of control that you can get with Labyrinth is really, really strong. The Arius adds a lot of options to the deck and makes the deck a lot harder to contend with, especially when like they start chaining their stuff because you responded to a card. It can be pretty overwhelming, and, you know, they'll snowball really quickly too. Now, I have played Labyrinth quite a bit, not this format, but a couple of formats ago, and I do remember that this deck was quite weak to Ash Blossom. They have rollback now, which means that if they can set up the rollback, they can actually just activate their welcome Labyrinth again. Not their welcome, I mean their big welcome again. And that just means they don't really care about your Ash if they get it set up, which is kind of crazy. But it doesn't happen all the time, and rollback can be kind of a brick. So pretty much any engine that you're adding to Labyrinth will kind of cost you in terms of consistency. And sometimes you'll just see some weird hands, or you'll just not get the full setup that you actually want. And instead you'll have like kind of a gimped Labyrinth board where you have to be very, very calculated and like very careful what you actually get rid of. So I do think this is actually, honestly, a hard deck to get to Master 1 with. I don't think this is easy mode. I know a lot of people pretend that Labyrinth is like turn your brain off. I don't agree at all. A lot of the time, it's you have to be like really patient and really careful to make it to Master 1 with this deck. But I do think it's extremely competent. There's a reason that it stays popular, that it stays relevant in ladder. It's a crazy card. Ice Dragon's Prison is super broken right now. So is Daruma Cannon, which completely counters Snake Eyes. So yeah, a ton of things going for this deck. I think it's really, really strong. It's the only trap deck that plays on turn 0. That's a pretty big deal. But we're going to move on here. Let's spread it out. Oh, yeah, we'll just do this one. This is a simple one. Blind Second Sprite. I think Blind Second Sprite is still like a tier 3 deck. I think it's better than Rogue. The format didn't change so much since the last time that I played this deck. I think I got to Master 1 or really close to Master 1 with this deck last format, so like a month ago. And the format didn't change so much for what this deck's game plan is. Blind Second Sprite is just, you know, have a bunch of board breakers at the ready, clear the board, set up a mosquito, and she's a win. While your opponent's playing, you can like watch YouTube, you know, or some shit. So I really, really like this deck if you want to just turn your brain off and climb ladder just for the gems. And yeah, huge shout out to Hoodaman Me, who gave me his Blind Second Sprite deck list. I still think that deck is super strong. Low-key, I think it's better than Mekonko, or at least like it's more turn your brain off, because the mosquito is just so good into the decks that are good right now. The mosquito is so crazy, and you can get the mosquito in a legacy pack if you're lucky. So, you know, you can even get it for free and just try out this deck. It's really, really cool. I have a deck profile for this one if anyone's curious or hasn't tried it. If you already have the Sprite cards and some board breakers, you can already build this. And if you're struggling in ladder, honestly, it's a pretty good pick. I still think it's super solid. I wouldn't put it in Rogue. I think it's like way too easy to win with this deck to put it in Rogue. So for the ladder format, at least, I'll put it in tier 3. If we were talking about tournament play, then yeah, I'd probably put it like in Rogue, because I wouldn't take this to tournaments. I feel like it'd be a bit too risky. I'm just going to do this right now. People are not going to like this. I think this deck is way better than Dino's, but I don't think it's Rogue. P.U.N.K. I know I've heard people say, dude, Horus makes P.U.N.K. way better, and I believe you, because I've played a good amount of P.U.N.K. I know how they are. I know that you can throw basically any engine with this deck, and it makes the deck better. Bro, it's not Rogue, dude. It is not Rogue. It's super fragile. You break the combos. Yeah, dude, P.U.N.K. is so power crept. Like, I believe you. Horus makes P.U.N.K. better. But that doesn't make Punk good, though, okay? So, yeah, you can probably get to Master 1 with this deck. It's high effort. I don't have that much faith in it. Yeah, it fell off, dude. But look, I'm not saying this is, like, unplayable. It's unplayable for a reason. I think it is possible to make it to Master 1 with Punk. It's just going to be an insanely uphill battle, dude. Your deck is so fragile to interruption. A lot of the time, one Ash will do it. One Imperm will do it. You're going to need, like, multiple cards that have their own combos so you can actually play. Like, it's tough out there for the Punk players. It's better than Dinos. You know, I'm putting it above Dinos, so don't get me wrong. But I don't think it's much higher than playable. But shout out to the Punk players, though. I love Punk. I really do. Sword, I see the line. Soul. Okay, guys, we're just going to fill out the playable here. So I'm going to show you all the decks that I put on this list that I think are, like, competent enough that you can play them, but they are not rogue. So I'll just put the rest of them, and then we'll talk about it, right? Memento is playable, and I think Sword Soul is also just playable. So that's it. That's the playable decks. These are the ones that are on the tier list, but I'm not putting in rogue or anything like that. Let's talk about it. I mean, Sword Soul hasn't really gotten better since like a year ago. The thing about Sword Soul is just like Sword Soul players have crazy hands. They always draw what they need, which just kind of keeps them around because they'll like run like 50 hand traps. And every single time they have exactly the hand trap they need for you and this situation specifically. And that's the reason that they're still here, honestly. Like, oh, and also because Sword Soul players are just that good, and they just see the line, and their IQ is 5,000, and because of that, you know, they just keep the deck relevant by being so mega mind, so smart, you know. Then we have Memento. Memento is Dinos but better. Memento is Dinos but better. The thing about Memento, and I could have put this in Rogue, if I was going just off how the deck felt. The thing about Memento is it's a knowledge check deck because basically a lot of people are just interrupting the wrong card in Memento. And because of that, you'll feel like you're actually playing a rogue deck because you're going to get a bunch of free wins off of people like ashing your Anguish or, you know, just activating something at the wrong time, basically. That's not one of your main choke points. Just because you don't see Memento a lot of people don't know what Memento does. And yeah, so you get a lot of free wins off of just your opponent not knowing how your deck works. But if you play anyone that knows the deck, they're going to ash your fusion, and you're likely to lose right there. Or they're going to ash your horse, and you're also very likely to lose right there. Memento has potential unlike the other playable decks. I can see bumping it up in the future. I mean, let's be real here. Memento is going to get support later. That's definitely going to make it better. And I think at that point, we could definitely bump it up a little bit. And there's a lot of things going for it too. I think it has good consistency. It has a lot of one-card starters, which is really cool. Having one-card combos is a pretty big deal. I think Memento does actually quite a bit, and its turn 1 combo is actually really, really strong thanks to Elf and stuff like that. I did practice this deck quite a bit. I think it's solid. I think once we get the support, I could see this even going like up here. Like there's something there. There's a lot of potential for this deck. But if we're being realistic here, the combos are very, very fragile. The consistency is good, but there's a lot of like semi-garnets that can kind of clog up your hand and make it pretty hard to play. So even though the consistency is good, you'll also get some really strange hands that are just kind of hard to play out to get full combo with. So all in all, enough weaknesses for me to not want to call it rogue, but I think there's something here. I think Memento might end up being solid at some point. Okay, so yeah, let's do Chimera. I love Chimera, by the way. The thing is, I love Chimera Runic, and if I was rating Chimera Runic, I would put it like above Sword Soul and playable, or maybe even below. No, I'd put it above Sword Soul and playable. The Runic package is just so terrible in Master Duel. They nerfed the hell out of the cool Runic decks, unfortunately. So we're just talking about Chimera Branded, and I just think it's like bottom of tier 3. It's a weaker version of Branded, but not so much weaker that it goes all the way down to Rogue. I still think like it has a lot of the strengths of Branded. It has the insane advantage generation of the Chimera engine. Like the amount of plus that you go off of the Chimera engine is crazy. The big downside for this thing, though, is that a lot of the time the Chimera engine wants your normal summon, and you only have one branded opening in your deck. So if you have to commit your normal summon to like an Alibur, that means you just kind of have to ignore your Chimera cards for that turn. So it's a little bit iffy. If you had 3 branded opening, honestly, this deck might be like way closer up here because it has like an insane ceiling. But as it stands, I think it's just a weaker branded. I'm going to put it at the bottom of tier 3. I think that's a pretty fair rating. I don't have much more to say about that. Okay, we'll do a quick one here. So Rogue, Heroes. You know, I'll just shoot through a couple of these. I don't think I need to say anything about Heroes. Heroes are always Rogue. They're the same as usual. Dark Law is good. They have good one-card combos. They're good at going second. They have some pretty obvious choke points. Vion is a pretty big one. And they're not the best deck in the world because they don't have as much space for non-engine as a lot of other decks. Still really, really strong. Can't sleep on them. It's heroes. Oh yeah, a lot of people were asking about this one actually. Let's do this one. That's another rogue contender. People are not happy about this one. With the new support, Salamangreat is rogue, obviously. I mean, it's still Salamangreat, bro. It's not that crazy. I tested it today. I feel like, yeah, you know, you get extra consistency, but you also still get like hands where you just like lose to like Imperm or Ash. You know, it gets some awkward hands. Yeah, there's a lot of people coping about this deck, I feel like. I'm not saying that to say it's bad. Again, I think it's solid, but I think it's like a solid rogue deck. It's right down the middle of rogue for me. A lot more room for hand traps. It's definitely better than hero. It has more room for hand traps, but it has less consistency and plays through less interruption. Salad is less susceptible to board breakers than hero. True. Because of Balinks. Okay. Branded Chimera is ass. No, it's not. No, it's... What? How? Branded Chimera is really solid. It's like just branded with a bit less staples. What do you mean hella ass? How is it ass? I'll believe you on heroes. I'll concede on heroes. It is better. Salad is better than heroes, chat. I'll concede. It's true. The protection of Salad is pretty important. Branded Fusion is at 1 and opening is at 1. Fair. That's fair. You might as well play normal branded. I agree. Normal branded is top of tier 3. This is the bottom of tier 3. I agree with you. Branded is just better version of this. Like, this is a worst branded deck. But I think the best version of Chimera is competitive. Like, it's really solid. For ladder, at least. Yeah, I'm just not going to take that argument of someone performing well with the deck. Someone did the same argument for Dinos earlier, saying, well, I've seen this deck do well at tournaments, so you should probably be at least in Rogue. I was like, no. So Salad goes tier 3 then? No. I don't believe it. You know, the only thing that argument about Chimera made me realize, Chimera's probably in Rogue. Chimera branded is probably Rogue, actually. That's the one thing I realized from that argument, is that this probably is not in the same bracket as these. Is Chimera branded really better than Unchained and Manadium? Honestly, yeah. Because you're playing branded into a format with Max C. It is way better. Yes. It also plays better into D-Shifter for the rare times that happens. Like, yeah, I do think so. For this format in ladder, you're better off playing Chimera than Unchained or Manadium or Superheavy Samurai. Or Salad. Like, you guys are pretending like the friggin' branded aspect of this deck just doesn't exist. Like, yeah, absolutely. Being able to play into Max C is extremely important in Master Duel. Doesn't Mathmech also lose to Max C? Yeah, but it is way better at going second than any of these decks. I'd say Salad and Mathmech are equally as strong. Nope. Not at all. This deck, like, if you're playing the build that locks you into fire, already has way less flexibility and options for going second. Can full board wipe and OTK easily? Yeah, but gets interrupted way quicker too. You need already a really great hand. This deck will literally do it off of like almost any hand. And Circular is like the fucking best card ever. Yeah, that's the thing, man. Like, that's what I was saying. Like, it's very hand dependent, obviously, but a lot of the time, like a good I was saying that a good interruption on your normal summon in Salad can just end your fucking game. That almost never happens to Mathmech. Yeah, I'm just gonna pass on this at this point. So yeah, I'm gonna double down here. Done arguing with chat. Salad is down here. I'm gonna put it above Hero. I'll concede on that, but definitely not conceding on putting it next to Mathmech. Like, that's crazy. I think at the bottom of Rogue probably is just Floowandereeze. It's good anti-meta. Going second, it's quite bad. But going first, you know, a lot of the things it sets up are good against a lot of the best decks in the game. I feel like it's a bit too good to play to put it just in playable. Like, I think you will do pretty good in a ladder with this deck, but I don't feel comfortable putting it much higher than bottom of Rogue. Sometimes it just gets you if you go first. Yeah, it's a similar thing to playing Stun. Honestly, it's pretty damn similar to Stun. Actually, speaking of Stun, I think Stun also goes up here in tier 3. I'm gonna include Horus Stun and just Stun variants in general up here. I think Stun is one of those decks where, like, in a tournament setting, might not be the best pick, but for ladder, it's quite good because a lot of the time, people will not even want to play out the game, because a lot of the time, if you actually play out the game against a Stun deck, you can win it, but people don't really have the patience for it, so a lot of the time, you'll see these Stun players get rank ups off of people just scooping really early, just, you know, not bothering to actually go through the 30-minute long duel that you actually have to do to beat these decks pretty often. And because of that, I think for ladder format, Stun is a pretty damn good pick. not to say it's the best deck ever. Going second is pretty damn bad for stun a lot of the time, and going first is great, but sometimes I'll still get really weird hands. A lot of the floodgates are banned or limited or semi-limited. Obviously, they're never going to run out of floodgates, but the deck did get significantly worse, I would say, over time. And at this point, again, not the best deck in the world, but definitely a really easy way to get to Master 1 if you don't really feel like thinking too much. Kind of similar to Blind Second Sprite. I think Blind Second Sprite is a bit better, actually, just because with this deck, you just turn your brain off, let your opponent do their whole combo, watch YouTube, then on your turn, you can just go crazy. Whereas with this deck, you know, you kind of have to win the coin flip, which already is going to hurt your win ratio a little bit because, you know, going second, you're going to go a second like 99% of games, whereas like going first, like you're going to go first about 50% of games, right? So that's going to hurt your win count a little bit. And then there's also the 1 or 2 opponents that can actually play into stun, and those duels are going to last you like forever. And you might not want to sit through a 2-hour duel just so you can win with your silly stun strategy. So yeah, I think this deck is a little bit better for ladder, but honestly pretty comparable style of deck where you just turn your brain off and just win the game a lot of the time. Tearlaments. Yeah, they're tier 2, obviously. I mean, they've been doing so good. They got that little boost from Horus. Not everyone runs the Horus engine. I don't think there's really like a full, what would you say? There's not like a consensus on tiers in ladder right now. But I will say, this deck is really, really good. It has a crazy ceiling. It has a ton of gas. Like you said, it will never die. Like, it refuses to die. It's still super solid. I think there's no debate that it's tier 2 in ladder. Like, it gets really good results. You see it on Master Duel meta win rates. It's doing really good in the ladder format. And honestly, you see it all the time. There's a reason for that. You see it all the time in Master because it's doing good. The deck is crazy. You got to M1 with it. Yeah, like, I mean, look, Tearlament is one of those decks where it's super explosive. It is a bit high rolly, which makes it, in my opinion, worse than Labyrinth or Purrely, or obviously these two here. Because even though your ceiling is super crazy, you're also sometimes going to get games where, like, you're doing a whole lot of nothing and you're, like, passing on, like, 1 or 2 interruptions despite playing for, like, 10 minutes, you know? So it can be sometimes, like, very luck-based if your board is actually good or not with Tearlament. Also, obviously, they took so many hits that they kind of have to offset themselves with a bunch of engines that can help sometimes, but also sometimes end up gimping your hands or even gimping your mills. And because of that, I feel like Tier is kind of in a weird spot where it's really strong, but it also, you're always making a sacrifice to boost your ceiling. It's a little iffy. I still think it's tier 2 though. I still think it's better than Branded personally. The fact that you can run it with so many different engines also just kind of means, like, oftentimes if you don't get your tier stuff, it doesn't even matter because you'll, like, do some horror stuff instead, or you'll do some Kashtira stuff, maybe some Vanadium stuff. Like, I've seen everything. Kind of hard to, like, really put this deck in a box, you know, like, because there's so many ways to play it. So I'll just say I think it's tier 2. I see it all the time in Master. I honestly also saw it almost as much as Snake Eyes. So yeah, really solid deck for ladder, obviously. Kashtira, basically, they have a good turn 1 setup. You almost never see this deck as a deck anymore. You almost always see Kashtira as an engine, so I barely wanted to include it. But I will say, yeah, if you get your Arise Hard setup, it beats, like, the vast majority of top tier decks, which is really good. It's anti-meta, right? So I'll put it here. I'm also going to put it higher than the other decks here because it's also an engine that's played in multiple better decks. Like, you see it in Snake Eyes. You see it even, like, in Labyrinth. I've seen it in Tearlament. Like, I've seen it in pretty much everything. Vanquish Soul. Yeah, I think Vanquish Soul is rogue. Vanquish Soul does have the ability to play well into a lot of the blowout hand traps that beat a lot of the other decks. Now, not as many of those are as popular now, but it does play well into Max C. It plays pretty well into, like, Imperm or Veiler, which are really popular right now because sometimes you can bounce your Razen back to hand just to, you know, dodge using, like, your Burger. So yeah, I admit it is way better at playing into some of those hand traps. Also, obviously, it plays really well into Shifter and can play Shifter, which not a lot of decks can do, and Shifter does clear this entire section over here pretty much. Beats all those except, like, Branded. So yeah, I think you're right. I think I'll put it up here, right under Salad. Right under Salad feels right, you know, under Salad, under Super Heavy. Yeah, I don't think it's fair to put this over these guys. Because even though on paper this deck does have all those things going for it, in practice you end up a lot of the time with really strange hands that are just kind of, like, half playable. If you don't have access to Razen, a lot of the time you're passing on like extremely low ceiling boards. So it's definitely not the craziest deck ever. I'll put it right above Heroes. So we don't have a lot of decks left here. Mikanko I'll put like right. I'll just put like right under Infernoble, because Mikanko to me at this point is just Infernoble. I almost never see pure Mikanko. I think as a pure going second deck, like Blind Second Sprite is better, but because Mikanko is run in the Infernoble deck and that deck, these two together are just fucking broken. I'll just put them next to each other. I think it just makes sense. Vision Resonator is here to represent Bestial Horus Resonator thingy majig deck, and it just seems like hand trap control with a couple of engines. It's really not that crazy, and there's better Horus decks that do that in my opinion. It just feels weird. It doesn't have great consistency, honestly, and you kind of have to get lucky to get like nice combos. You don't always get them from what I've seen. Yeah, I don't think no, you're right. Yeah, I think the Bestial Resonator Horus deck is not even as good as the regular Resonators. So I guess we'll just go for regular Resonators. We'll just rank it as Resonators. In which case, Heroes choke points are not as obvious. I put it under Heroes. I think Resonator, we'll just go for pure Resonator because, yeah, the Horus Bestial version is actually is not as good as the pure in my opinion. So you're right. We'll just go for the pure one. So pure, RDA, Resonator. I would put very low Rogue. I think it's definitely better than the playable decks. It's solid, has a good turn one and everything. Just has a really, really obvious choke point with the Red Rising Dragon, which hurts it a lot in my opinion. And obviously, like all the combo decks in this tier, loses super hard to Max C, which is a pretty big deal. This has been a really, really long tier list stream. A lot of yapping, a lot of arguing with the chat. The last deck I want to put on my tier list, the final hot take. Before we let this video be YouTube commenters' problem, I think Naturia Horus is tier 2. I mean, I just bodied a master rank with Naturia Horus. Easy money getting Master 1 with this deck. 5 wins in a row in Master 2 to land straight into Master 1 with this deck. It is crazy, bro. It is broken. I mean, there's just so many things going for this deck. It plays really well into Max C, much better than many other decks. The Naturia engine can set up so much off of like 1 or 2 summons. It's ridiculous. Like it really, I'd say this deck does more than branded into Max C a lot of the time. It depends on the situation and the hand for sure. But yeah, another thing that's going for it that a lot of people are sleeping on is that the Photon Prime Zeus package makes this deck so much better at going second. The Horus aspect of the deck makes it so now your Naturia deck can kind of just use all the Naturia cards to, you know, either bait your opponent's interruptions or insulate yourself from them with like the Sunflower negates or the Barkion negates if you're playing against Trap deck or something like that. And then once you have that set up, you can just go into your Horus engine, set up a Zeus using, you know, your Happy and your Imseti, and just have a 4 material Zeus, clear the board, regain control of the game. In that combo, you're probably already searching Naturia Blessing, so on your opponent's turn, you can bring back a Camellia. The game state is simplified. If they summon anything, you get to bring back a Sunflower. Like, you get so much control off of just that little Horus package going into Zeus. Not to mention, sometimes you don't even need to go into Zeus because the Neo Prime Photon Dragon will just swing 3 times or 3 times, you know, for 4,000 damage. So depending on the situation, you can even just go straight for game with that. So I think that the Horus package makes Naturia so much better. One of their biggest weaknesses used to be that going second, they didn't really put up bodies, you know, and they weren't really good at getting into Zeus. So it was kind of tough going second. But now I actually really like this deck going second, and I've won a lot of my games in Master Rank just going second. And because of that, being able to play into Maxi well, being able to play going second well, and also if you don't get hit by Maxi, having like insane combos and like really, really oppressive boards with like Naturia Beast being obviously like an insane card, and obviously being able to Calamity Lock your opponent turn 1 way easier than any other deck. Yeah, I think this deck is tier 2. And you know what? If you look at Master Duel meta, because I know a lot of people are going to think I'm crazy, so I'm actually going to back this up with data. I never do this because this is just my opinion. This is just my opinion. But if we look at the data, if we go to top cards on Master Duel meta, and this was updated 4 days ago, okay, so May 20th, 2024, win rate of cards summoned went up, and Hot Red Dragon Archfiend King Calamity is the highest. Why? It's because of us, baby. It's because of Naturia Horus, okay? Trust me. This is the reason, okay? So we have the two, in our deck, we have the two highest win rate summoned cards in the game. So I believe that I'm justified in saying that Naturia Horus is absolutely, at the very least, tier 2, okay? It's crazy. I think the deck is crazy, and I think it's underrated, honestly. That's the tier list. So, chat, what do you think? You think the tier list is a W list? It seems like everyone agreed with me pretty much the whole time. Like, everyone agreed with me the whole time. It took us like over an hour to do this whole list. Everyone agreed with me except for Salamangreat, which was a huge disagreement. I'm surprised Naturia was accepted by chat so easily as tier 2. Well, you know, I activated my Yapatron for that one. I had to have reasoning for that one. I had to go hard on the reasoning for the Naturia, you know? I had to really explain it.